We appreciate every single one of you. We'd love to know what part of the world you are watching from right now. Let us know in the comments. Now, let's dive into today's story, Chapter 1. The moment Lorna said those words, the room went silent. Not just quiet. Silent. As if the air itself froze, waiting to see what Vaughn would do. He just stood there, half a foot from the doorway, holding the dinner she had skipped making again. Thai takeout, 2 containers. One untouched. What did you say? He asked, his voice low. She did not blink. You heard me. You can fight wars overseas, but you cannot even keep this house in order. You are never here. You are useless here. Vaughn's jaw clenched. He felt a twitch in his hand, but forced it still. Lorna, do you really believe that? She scoffed and walked past him, wine glass in hand. You can't even protect us. You think your medals mean anything here? This is real life, Vaughn, not your war zone fantasy. He watched her go, watched her sit on the couch, legs folded like a queen in a castle he built but no longer owned. And in that moment, Vaughn Reynolds knew something was wrong. Not just a cold marriage, not just drifting. No, something was rotten, and he would find it. That night, he lay awake beside her. Her phone buzzed twice at 1:07 a.m. She turned it face down, smiled faintly. Vaughn did not ask. He did not touch her. He stared at the ceiling and remembered a firefight in Kandahar, how the enemy had been in uniform too. The next morning, while she showered, he took her phone. Not to read messages, no. That was too obvious. He mirrored it to a private cloud instead. He would not confront her. He would build a case. Quietly. Strategically. Like a soldier surrounded. Because if she wanted war, she just chose the wrong general. Wait, let me speak to you from the heart. I pour my soul into every single story you hear. The late nights, the edits, the voiceovers. This isn't just content to me. This is my purpose. But here's the truth. Out of 1,000 viewers, barely a handful actually subscribe. And that hurts, not because of numbers, but because I know many of you feel these stories the way I do. The first clue was a new bottle of cologne in the master bathroom. Not his. Vaughn never wore imported fragrances. He had allergies, and Lorna knew that. Yet there it was, Monarch Pour-Homme, a scent for a man who wanted to be remembered after leaving the room. He did not touch it, just stared. The house smelled different now. Different candles. New throw pillows on the bed. A rug in the guest room he never saw purchased. Photos moved. His medals, once displayed on the shelf, were now stored in a hallway drawer. He was being erased. Slowly. Surgically. And then came the bracelet. It was resting on her nightstand. Sterling silver with a custom engraved charm. L+B. Vaughn held it in his palm like a piece of broken bone. B. There was no B in their circle. No cousins. No colleagues. No brothers. That night, she came home smelling faintly of Monarch. Vaughn asked no questions. Just smiled and said, I made chicken. She poured a glass of wine instead. I ate already. Where? Office catered something. Big project. You would not understand. He nodded. I probably would not. But he did. 3 nights later, the man left through their side gate. Vaughn caught it on the motion sensor cam he installed that week. Tall. Sharp suit. Bald head. Car. Matte black Tesla with military contractor tags. Vaughn froze the frame. Enhanced it. He knew the face. Brooks Callan. Defense tech billionaire. Former subject of an audit Vaughn had pushed years ago. Corrupt. Ruthless. Dangerous. And now, apparently, very close to Vaughn's wife. Vaughn watched the footage 5 times. Then backed it up onto 3 encrypted drives. There would be no confrontation. Not yet. You do not shoot until you see the whites of their lies. Vaughn's hand bled when he crushed the coffee mug in his fist. He had not realized he was squeezing it until porcelain splinters dug into his palm. He said nothing, just cleaned the blood, bandaged the hand, put the broken pieces in a Ziploc bag and labeled it, proof of control lost. Because he was a soldier. Soldiers log everything. And he needed to remember the cost of losing composure. He sat in the garage that night, staring at his old army gear. Years of service. Hundreds of missions. a silver star for leading a team out of an ambush. He had protected people in Kabul, Tikrit, and Benghazi. But in his own home, he was blind. He pulled out the burner phone he had purchased 2 days prior. Slim, black, disposable. He installed a recorder, linked it to a cloud account Lorna could never trace. Then, he placed it under the guest bed, the same room the man had exited from on camera. If they were going to betray him in his house, they were going to do it into a microphone. By morning, he had his first recording. Her voice, soft, laughing. "You really think he suspects anything?" she said. A man's chuckle. Then, "Even if he does, what's he gonna do? Salute me?" They laughed. Vaughn did not. He stared at the waveform file like it was an enemy map, then saved it. Later that day, he drove to an old friend's office. A woman he had served with. Someone who owed him one. Someone who never forgot the mission. "Reiko," he said quietly, "I need you to help me destroy 2 people." She looked at his eyes. Not anger. Not fear. Precision. She nodded once. "I am listening." Vaughn sat alone in the den, lit only by the glow of a laptop screen. A map of metadata unfolded like a battlefield diagram. Text messages, call logs, location pings. Everything he had pulled from Lorna's mirrored phone. The pattern was clear. Tuesday nights. Friday afternoons. Every other Sunday. Her strategy meetings always ended near Brooks Callan's private condo. Vaughn traced Uber routes, card transactions, even her Spotify history. Brooks had created a playlist for her. Fire and Silk. Disgusting, he muttered, but useful. He exported the files into encrypted folders. One labeled Personal Infidelity. Another, Financial Exposure. A third, Military Compromise. Each file was a bullet he had not yet fired. He kept his expression blank, even when reading texts like, "Lorna, he is a ghost when he is here. I deserve fire, not silence. Brooks, then burn it all, babe. Let him rot in that uniform." He closed the laptop slowly, not angry, focused. That night, he checked the recorder under the bed. New audio. "Lorna, he is going to sign those budget papers, right? We cannot afford him getting cold feet. Brooks already did. Your signature was better than mine. Forgery. It was more than betrayal now. It was fraud. Federal. Possibly treason." Vaughn made 3 more copies. One in the safe. One in a locker at the gym. One mailed to an address that did not exist yet, but would soon. He was not just going to expose them. He was going to dismantle them piece by piece, with the same silence they had used to betray him. The bracelet haunted him. L+B. He stared at it under a microscope he had from a past mission, a tool for verifying counterfeit currency. Why? Because something about it felt off. Too new. Too custom. Then he saw it. The maker's engraving inside the clasp. BG & Company, a luxury brand that did not take walk-in clients. Invitation only. He dug. 24 hours later, he had the invoice. Purchased by Brooks Callan. Recipient, Lorna Reynolds. Delivery address, private, client requested discretion. He printed it, highlighted the name, added it to the infidelity file. The next day, Lorna came home wearing it again. "New?" he asked. She flinched. Slightly. "No, you have seen it." "Right," he said softly. "It looks familiar." She said nothing, but he saw her glance at her phone. He tracked her text 5 minutes later. "Lorna." He noticed the bracelet. "Be careful. Brooks, let him. He cannot prove a thing." But Vaughn was not interested in proving. Not yet. He was interested in watching her sweat, in making her wonder how much he knew, in giving her the space to make bigger mistakes. That night, she told him she had a conference out of state. He kissed her forehead. "Be safe," he said. Then he sent her hotel confirmation to Reiko Dunn, who was already on a plane, booking the room next door under a false name. The trap had started breathing. Saturday morning, Vaughn made pancakes. His daughter, Lila, sat at the counter coloring. She was 7, sharp-eyed, and far too quiet lately. He flipped a pancake. "You doing okay, baby?" She nodded, but her hands paused. Then she said it. Who was the man in the black car? His heart stopped. What man, sweetie? Mommy told me not to talk about him. But he waved at me. I did not wave back. Vaughn kept his hands still. Calm. Control. No reaction. When did you see him? Twice. Once at the gate. And once when Mommy dropped me off at ballet. He was there. He sat down slowly. Do you remember what he looked like? He was bald. Fancy suit. He smiled like he was trying too hard. Vaughn kissed her head. Thank you for telling me, sweetheart. Then he stood, walked into the bathroom, and turned the faucet on. And punched the mirror. Not in rage. In grief. Because this was no longer about betrayal. It was about contamination. Brooks Callan had entered his daughter's world. That night, Vaughn installed an extra camera outside the house. And a tracker in Lorna's car. She had dragged the war onto sacred ground. There would be no forgiveness now. There he was. Brooks Callan. Projected on Vaughn's laptop screen. Taken from a long-lens photo Reiko snapped at the hotel lobby. Hand on Lorna's waist. Face tilted toward hers. Whispering something that made her laugh like a teenager sneaking out. Vaughn studied him. This was not just a man who betrayed him. This was a man he had once tried to take down. 5 years ago, on a corruption probe involving inflated defense contracts and phantom prototypes. At the time, the audit had been shut down. Too many hands involved. Too many officials playing blind. Vaughn's report had gone missing. But Brooks had not. He had simply gotten richer. Now, the man he once investigated was sleeping with his wife and using her as a front to funnel dirty money through military logistics. Vaughn leaned back in the chair. The irony cut deeper than any insult. He flipped open a folder labeled Recovered Procurement Files. Reiko had pulled them from a secure base server under her credentials. Vaughn scanned the vendor codes. One stood out, Ardent Logic Systems. A fake company. A shell. And the payments matched the exact dates Lorna worked late. She was not just complicit. She was on the books. Later that day, Vaughn walked past Lorna in the kitchen. You still doing the outreach project with DHS? He asked, casual. She blinked. Yeah, that one. Why? But even if he does, what would he actually do? Brooks, let him find out. He cannot touch me. He is a broken man with a badge from a system that forgot him. That last line lit something deep inside Vaughn. A burn that had nothing to do with marriage. It was legacy. It was dignity. And it was war now. He forwarded the file to Reiko. She replied 2 minutes later, Reiko, this is enough for federal interest. But I want to go bigger. I want full exposure. Give me 72 hours. Vaughn, take 48. He could not sleep that night. Instead, he sat in his daughter's room while she slept. She was breathing slow, mouth open, clutching her stuffed bear. He touched her hair. Thought of the way her voice had cracked when she said, I did not wave back. He whispered, no one gets to walk away clean. Not after this. The next morning, Lorna announced she was leaving for another off-site conference. Vaughn just nodded. Need a ride to the airport? She smiled like she still believed she was winning. I got it covered. Of course you do, he replied. Vaughn entered a storage facility on the edge of town, unit number 52. The lights buzzed overhead. Inside, servers, documents, surveillance gear, a fold-out table with 2 laptops. His war room. Everything was backed up here. Duplicated. Cataloged. He laid out the pieces like a soldier arranging ordnance before deployment. Target 1. Brooks Callan. Fraud, contract tampering, federal violations, potential witness intimidation. Target 2. Lorna Reynolds. Co-conspirator, signature forgeries, access to confidential data, domestic espionage, possible leverage over a federal agent. He opened a manila folder labeled Mission Logic Tree, a habit from his military days. Phase 1. Evidence collection. Complete. Phase 2. Trigger surveillance. Ongoing. Phase 3. Public exposure. Upcoming. No shouting. No confrontation. Just annihilation through silence. He set up a real-time sync between Reiko's incoming audit logs and his archive. Every file. Every email. Every phone ping from Lorna's car now lit up on his map. He poured coffee. Sat down. Pulled out a thumb drive labeled Black Echo 01. the final component of his revenge. Inside it, a full presentation with timelines, photos, signed approvals, and voice clips. Once triggered, it would auto-send to 6 email addresses, 2 federal inboxes, and the live projector system for a very specific upcoming event. The Defense Partners Gala. A red carpet night where Brooks and his firm were set to receive a national honor. Lorna would be by his side, smiling for the cameras. And Vaughn would be watching, not in anger, in control. And when that moment came, the world would know exactly who they were. Sunday afternoons used to be peaceful. Now, Vaughn sat at the patio table pretending to stir sugar into his tea while watching Lorna's younger sister, Harper, talk too fast over brunch. Lorna had invited her over. Vaughn suspected it was to maintain the illusion of normal. Harper, barely 27, worked in social media and had the self-awareness of a golden retriever. She was nice, but careless. And then we missed our connecting flight, right? She was saying to Lorna with a laugh. But Brooks, oh my God. I mean, he handled it so well. Silence. Vaughn's spoon stopped mid-stir. Lorna went pale. What did you say? Harper blinked, confused. Brooks? From that defense firm you're always working with? I thought Vaughn knew you guys were. She stopped. Looked at Vaughn. He smiled gently. Go on, Harper. Lorna's voice turned icy. Harper. Shut up. Harper's face went red. I just assumed. I thought he knew. You guys were in, like, Boston together a couple months back. I saw your post. Lorna stood abruptly. Vaughn, can we talk? He stood too. No need. He picked up the tray of empty cups and walked them to the kitchen, humming something tuneless. Lorna followed. Whatever Harper thinks she knows, she is wrong. Vaughn rinsed a mug. I believe her. You were just upset she said it in front of me. You were twisting things. No. I am watching them untangle. She opened her mouth. Closed it. Then tried again. You have no idea what you were involved in. Vaughn turned, wiped his hands, and looked her dead in the eyes. That is where you were wrong. Then he walked past her calm, clean, and utterly unreadable. The airport cafe was half empty when Major Reiko Dunn walked in. Tall, stern, braided hair pulled tight. She scanned the room like a sniper. Vaughn raised a hand. Over here. She slid into the booth. You look terrible. Been sleeping better, Vaughn replied dryly. Reiko dropped a tablet on the table and turned it to face him. This is what we have so far. Dozens of files. Government invoices, chain of custody breaches, private account transfers all tied to Brooks Callan's shell companies. 2 of them were routed through Lorna's name. She is not just a mistress. She is a laundering front, Reiko said. They used her clearance and your dormant authorization code to sign off on black budget logistics. That makes it look like you signed off. Vaughn's jaw tightened. So they are trying to frame me too. Not trying. They already did. But they are stupid. You kept records. And I pulled server logs from my base with timestamps that do not match yours. That is how we catch them. Vaughn sat back. How close are we? I have a contact at the U.S. Attorney's Office. If we drop this bomb right, we get indictments and media coverage. Not yet, Vaughn said. I want them to feel safe first. Reiko grinned. You always were patient. Cold as hell, but patient. You taught me that, he said. She nodded. You were the best recon I ever had. You still are. Vaughn paused, then looked her in the eye. Thank you for doing this. I did not do it for you, she said. I did it because this is how rot spreads in silence. We kill it with exposure. They shook hands. The war was no longer private. Lorna was humming when she came home. That fake hum she used when she wanted to sound busy or confident. She dropped her purse, kicked off her heels, and strutted to the kitchen as if the world belonged to her. Vaughn was already there, sipping black coffee, reading a paperback. You were home early, she said. He flipped a page. Just needed some air. Going somewhere tomorrow? She asked too casually. I noticed you packed a bag. Vaughn closed the book. Just a little trip. Friend of mine runs a cybersecurity firm. Thought I would consult. Oh. She smiled tight. Sounds productive. He stood. Productivity is important. Otherwise, you end up wasting time. Years, even. Lorna's smile faltered for half a second, then recovered. You know, we could take a break. Maybe some space would be good for us. Reset things. He stepped closer. Not threatening, just present. You really think a reset erases everything? I think people make mistakes. He studied her face. Mistakes are accidental. You made plans. She blinked. I am just saying, no, he said sharply. You are trying to delay what you know is coming, but it is already here. She swallowed. Vaughn leaned in, calm as a whisper. Do not wake the snake, Lorna. You think I am quiet because I am broken. I am quiet because I am watching. And when I strike, it will be final. She stared at him, really stared, for the first time in months. Then, for once, she had nothing to say. He walked out of the room. And for the first time, she looked scared. The invitation had arrived by mistake, or so Lorna thought. A black and gold envelope sat on the kitchen counter, addressed to Vaughn. It was for a charity gala at the Elkridge Country Club, hosted by none other than Brooks Callan's firm. Vaughn picked it up slowly, flipping it over in his hands. She was too casual about it. Oh, that must be an error. It is probably meant for me. I did some consulting with their PR department last month. Vaughn nodded. Of course. Makes sense. He RSVP'd the same night privately, through a different channel. 2 days later, he walked into the country club alone. Everyone in the room wore masks of wealth and champagne. Brooks stood near the fireplace, laughing with 2 senators. His arm was around Lorna's waist. They looked like a power couple on the cover of a tech magazine. Vaughn stayed back, blending with the crowd, drink in hand. He did not cause a scene. He did not approach. He just observed. Flashbulbs went off. One photographer captured Lorna and Brooks in a tight pose, her hand flat against his chest. That photo would be very useful. Vaughn slipped a drive to the photographer with a quiet whisper. Send me everything from tonight. Double your rate. He handed over cash. The man nodded. Vaughn left without saying a word. Later that night, Lorna came home smelling of champagne and cologne, Monarch Pour Homme. He was already in bed, eyes closed. She slid under the sheets and whispered, Are you awake? He said nothing, but his heart beat steady, like a sniper holding breath before the kill shot. Reiko's email came at 4:12 a.m. sharp. Subject, Found your ghost. Inside, a PDF, a screenshot, and a 3-line message. Ardent Logic Systems, LLC, formed 14 months ago in Delaware. Registered agent, Brooks Callan. Primary contact, L. Reynolds, business admin. Vaughn exhaled slowly. He opened the PDF and studied the paper trail, vendor forms, payment logs, and most importantly, his forged digital signature on 2 separate contracts. That was the nail. Brooks had not just committed fraud. He had committed it under Vaughn's name. Vaughn printed the docs, lined them up across the wall of unit number 52. Then he drew the lines, Lorna's sign-offs, Brooks' payments, ghost inventory orders shipped but never delivered. Over $1.7 million in military funds misappropriated. And all of it ran through that dummy company. He dialed Reiko. You sure it is clean? He asked. As clean as a crime scene gets. No real products, just invoices and fake delivery receipts. You are being set up as the scapegoat, Vaughn. But I have every digital footprint to reverse engineer the whole fraud trail. Time to weaponize it, he said. She paused. You still want to wait for the gala? Yes, he said. That is where the applause will be loudest when the fall hits. Reiko gave a short laugh. Cold. Strategic. I love it. Make sure the agents are ready. This is not just about justice. It is about showing them they were never in control. He hung up. Then he looked at the web of lies on the wall and whispered to himself, They built this house of cards with my name on the foundation. At 2 a.m., Vaughn slipped into the guest room, where the affair had begun. He pulled out the burner phone from beneath the bed. The light blinked. 3 new recordings. He played the most recent one. Lorna, he has no idea how easy it was. He signs anything with military jargon. He thinks it is just protocol. Brooks, he is too disciplined. It makes him predictable. He will never confront you. That is why we win. Vaughn stared at the phone. He copied the files to a flash drive marked in red ink. Final strike. Next, he opened his safe. Inside, marriage license, deployment medals, their daughter's birth certificate, and a second flash drive labeled insurance. He added final strike to the collection. Then, from his backpack, he pulled a package addressed to an alias he had not used since Afghanistan. He placed the flash drive inside and sealed it. The label read, "To be delivered if Vaughn Reynolds is arrested, missing, or deceased." The next morning, Lorna found him sipping coffee on the back porch. "You were up early," she said, voice syrup sweet. "Old habits," he replied. She leaned on the railing. "You know. Sometimes I miss the way things were." He looked at her, long and slow. "I do not." There was a moment of silence. Then she asked, "Are we okay?" He sipped once more, then smiled gently. "Lorna, we are exactly where we are supposed to be." And she walked away, still not realizing just how close the fire was. Thursday night. The lights in the dining room were low and warm. Soft jazz played from the speaker in the corner. Lorna had planned everything: rosemary lamb, red wine, linen napkins. Brooks and two of his business partners arrived just past 7. Vaughn shook hands, smiled like a gentleman, and offered drinks. He played the role. Calm, cordial, invisible. To them, he was nothing more than the polite husband, retired military, blind to the web wrapped around him. But he was not blind. He was memorizing everything. Brooks sat at the head of the table, all confidence and charm. Lorna laughed at his jokes, touched his arm too long. Vaughn said little. He simply passed dishes, nodded, and watched. At one point, Brooks raised a glass. To partners. The kind who make things happen in silence. The others laughed. Lorna beamed. Vaughn raised his own glass, held it up, and met Brooks' eyes directly. To silence, he said. Then he drank. After dessert, Lorna walked them out while Vaughn collected the plates. As soon as the front door shut, he pulled a hidden voice recorder from under the table. He played it back. "Brooks, Reynolds is just background noise. He has no idea that half his former clearance is being used to run our logistics string. Partner, so he signed those files?" "Lorna, I signed them for him. I know how to mimic his signature. He never looks at the fine print. It was all there. Crisp, clear. Proof of conspiracy, forgery, and theft." Vaughn labeled the audio file, dinner_partners_breach.mp3. That would be the centerpiece in the storm to come. The following morning, Vaughn sat in unit number 52, staring at 3 columns of numbers on his second monitor. Rayco had come through. Each payment matched perfectly to a forged requisition form. Transfers were routed through Ardent Logic systems, then funneled into holding accounts under shell names, all owned by Brooks or affiliates. 2 accounts even had Lorna listed as an authorized auditor. The sum total was staggering, $1.73 million over 11 months. Military funds, taxpayer money, all stolen under the guise of logistics support, routed using Vaughn's old clearance tags. It was not just betrayal. It was weaponized deceit. Rayco called. "You're looking at it now?" she asked. "Yes," Vaughn said. "And it is worse than I thought. We can take it to the feds today. We have more than enough." "Not yet," he replied. "I want them to receive the award first." Rayco paused. "Why?" "Because I want every camera on them when they fall." She laughed softly. "You always were poetic about justice." Vaughn added the transfer logs to the final presentation. Slide by slide, he arranged the images, audio, and numbers into a timeline of corruption, each event dated and cross-referenced. Then he prepared 6 USB drives. 1 for the federal agents, 1 for the press, 1 for Rayco, 1 for legal backup, 1 for his personal record, and 1 to be handed over on stage at the gala. The execution would be clean, surgical, legal. No one would scream. No punches thrown. Only silence. And then collapse. Lorna was packing for D.C. when Vaughn walked into the bedroom. "Need help with anything?" he asked. She turned, startled. "No, just a 3-day thing. You know how these events go." "Of course," he said. "You look prepared." She smiled thinly. I have to be. It is an important weekend. The award is a big deal for Brooks. I heard, he said calmly. National visibility. Government eyes. Good time to be at your best. She studied him, uncertain. You really are okay with all this? Vaughn met her gaze. I trust that what is meant to happen will happen. She looked away first. Later that night, Vaughn watched from the hallway as Lorna whispered into her phone near the balcony. We are set for Saturday, she said. He is not a threat. He is passive. I think the award will make it final. After that, it will be easier to push him out. Pause. No, I am not worried. I have covered my bases. He is not smart enough to trace anything. She hung up, stared at the stars. Behind her, Vaughn said nothing, just stepped back into the shadows. She would walk onto that stage in 48 hours. She would smile, shake hands, receive praise, and then the truth would detonate. Not with fire, with facts, with her own words played on speakers, with the people she thought were allies turning their backs. Vaughn walked into the garage and sat alone. He opened the presentation one last time. Slide 1. A smiling photo of Lorna and Brooks. Slide 2. Vaughn's forged signature. Slide 3. You can't even protect us, her voice clip. He pressed save, then whispered to no one. Watch me. Friday morning, Vaughn sat at the kitchen island, sipping black coffee, when Lorna dropped a manila envelope beside him. She was dressed sharply, dark navy blouse, gold watch, subtle makeup. The look of someone about to accept a public award and bury a life behind her. He picked up the envelope slowly. I had them drawn up last week, she said. Efficient, he replied. It is amicable, she added quickly. I already signed my side. I am not asking for anything. No drama. I just think this is overdue. He opened it, reviewed the papers without flinching. Everything was worded clean. Dissolution, asset division, custody schedule proposals. Why now? He asked quietly. She shrugged. Because it is time. You know it. We are done. He looked up at her. You sure you want this signed before tomorrow? She blinked. Why does that matter? No reason, he said. Just seems fast. But I understand. He signed them right there. Each page. No hesitation. Then placed the pen down. Lorna exhaled in relief, as if she had cleared the final obstacle in her new life. I will have my lawyer file it Monday morning. Vaughn smiled faintly. Of course. Congratulations. She left shortly after. He stared at the papers a moment longer, then slid them back into the envelope, unopened again. He was not heartbroken. He was documenting the final piece of evidence. Proof that she believed she had won. And that made the fall even sweeter. That same afternoon, Vaughn met Reiko in a secured conference room at a federal annex downtown. The district attorney for the Eastern Division sat across from them, arms folded, glasses perched low. You are telling me this man, Callan, and his associate, your wife, have funneled over $1 million in ghost contracts using defense logistics loopholes? Yes, Vaughn said flatly. Reiko added, and we have every signature, timestamp, and digital breadcrumb, including audio of both admitting forgery and intent to deceive. The DA leaned back. Jesus Christ. This could shake contracts all the way to Washington. Vaughn nodded. That is the point. And you want to expose them publicly? Yes, Reiko said before Vaughn could. During the gala. On stage, with witnesses. Cameras. Public accountability. The DA scratched his head. You are playing with fire. Not fire, Vaughn replied. Facts. Silence. Then the DA leaned forward. I want copies of everything. If what you are saying holds, we go in immediately after the reveal. Freezing assets. Issuing arrest orders. But I want it clean. You will have clean, Vaughn said. We are not throwing punches. We are dropping proof. Then bring me the hammer, the DA said. They shook hands. Vaughn handed over one of the red-marked USB drives. This one, he said. This is the one that burns the house down. The hotel suite was elegant, sterile, and high above the DC skyline. Lorna stood in front of the mirror, trying on earrings. Do these make me look older or more serious? Brooks, lounging on the bed in his tailored shirt, smirked. You could wear nothing and still look like a CEO. She laughed, twirling. Tomorrow's the big night. It is already ours, he said, sipping scotch. The award, the spotlight, the next round of contracts, all of it. By next quarter, we will be untouchable. Lorna walked over and sat beside him. Vaughn signed the divorce papers today. No resistance. Brooks chuckled. Told you. He was never a threat. You sure there is no loose end? He is a retired grunt with no allies. You won this. She smiled and rested her head on his chest. Outside, thunder rolled faintly in the distance. One flash drive in his inner coat pocket. Another hidden in a leather case for delivery. The projector was already tested. The wireless feed was preloaded, set to override all screens the moment his key went live. He looked at the photo tacked to the wall. Lorna, smiling, in love. From years ago. He did not hate her. He had just stopped recognizing her. He turned off the lights and left the unit. Tomorrow, they would receive everything they ever wanted. And then they would lose it all. Saturday morning. The ballroom at the Eaton Regency was a temple of high society, crystal chandeliers, velvet drapes, and a stage backed by LED walls. The Defense Partners Gala had drawn CEOs, retired generals, politicians, and press. Lorna walked the carpet in a fitted emerald gown. Brooks at her side, grinning like a man who had already conquered everything he could. Vaughn arrived 30 minutes later. Alone. Black suit. No tie. Face calm. Unreadable. She saw him. Her expression barely flickered. Just a flash of confusion, then smug neutrality. You came, she said. Wouldn't miss it, he replied. Brooks extended a hand. Still standing tall, soldier? Vaughn shook it. Firm. Unblinking. Always. A staffer came by with gift bags for speakers. Vaughn accepted his end, while Lorna chatted with the mayor, slid a small black USB drive into her purse. Labeled in gold letters, evidence. He said nothing. She said nothing. And the countdown had already begun. Upstairs, in the tech booth, Reiko sat beside the AV operator under a fake badge. The operator frowned. This isn't the slideshow I cued. Reiko smiled. It is now. Ladies and gentlemen, the host's voice echoed across the ballroom. Please welcome to the stage our honorees, Brooks Callan and Lorna Reynolds. Applause thundered. Cameras flashed. Brooks adjusted his cufflinks. Lorna glided toward the stage, face glowing. Vaughn stood at the back, watching it all, watching them believe. A spotlight fell on them. The screen behind them flickered. Lorna took the mic. Thank you all. This honor is. The screen went black. Then came a single phrase, in bold white text. You can't even protect us. Lorna Reynolds. The room paused. Then the screen lit up again, this time with video. A grainy hotel room feed. Lorna's voice. He signs anything with military jargon. He thinks it's just protocol. Brooks, let him find out. He can't touch me. Gasps. Murmurs. Phones raised. Whispers swelled into panic. Then, emails. Signatures. The ardent logic files. The payment logs. Her bracelet. One by one. Proof. Not speculation. Brooks froze. Lorna turned ghost white. Brooks stepped forward. This is an attack. This is real, Vaughn said, stepping onto the stage. Cameras turned to him. I am Vaughn Reynolds. The man you tried to erase. The signature you forged. The life you thought was too quiet to notice. He turned to the crowd. This is the truth. And it is all yours now. The federal agents entered at the back. Brooks Callan, one shouted, you're under arrest for federal procurement fraud, obstruction of justice, and conspiracy. Lorna backed away. Wait. I didn't. You did, Vaughn said, his voice steady. And now the world knows. The applause did not come. Only silence. Lorna stood center stage, arms stiff at her sides, lips trembling. One of the board members stepped forward and whispered, get off the stage. Now. She looked at Brooks. But he was already being cuffed, his head bowed, eyes wide with disbelief. She turned back to Vaughn, her voice barely audible. How long? Long enough, he said. You used me. No, he replied. You used me. I just kept the receipt. Press swarmed the stage. Microphones, cameras, questions, flashes. She stumbled as she stepped down, heels catching on the carpet. Her composure cracked fully now, makeup smeared, dress wrinkled, arms shaking. Reporters surrounded her. Did you forge military documents? Were you sleeping with Brooks Callan while married to a veteran? Are you the L. Reynolds on the federal audit list? She said nothing, just kept walking, surrounded but completely alone. Vaughn stood at the edge of the stage, staring at the wreckage. Reiko appeared beside him. It's done. He nodded. Almost. Still want the press copies out? Yes, he said. Let them see what betrayal looks like. Lorna exited the ballroom into the hallway and collapsed against the wall. Her chest heaved. No one followed. No husband. No lover. No allies. She opened her purse with shaking hands. Found the USB. The word evidence stared back at her like a curse. She dropped it and walked into the empty corridor like a ghost in a dress she no longer deserved to wear. Sunday morning. The headlines hit faster than the morning coffee. Brooks Callan arrested live on stage. Defense contract scandal explodes at gala. Wife of military veteran implicated in federal fraud scheme. Vaughn sat in his living room. Coffee untouched. Television muted. A thick envelope from Reiko lay open on the table. Inside, copies of freeze orders, subpoena notices, and a federal indictment draft. One detail stood out. All accounts associated with Ardent Logic Systems are frozen effective immediately, including Lorna's personal accounts. A sharp knock broke the silence. It was her. She stood in the doorway, makeup smudged, her dress replaced with jeans and a hoodie. She looked like someone who had not slept. He opened the door. You destroyed me, she said. No, Vaughn replied. You did that. I just handed the court the file. You do not understand what they are doing. My accounts, my job, everything is locked. They are saying I knew, that I ran the payments. You did, he said calmly. And I can prove it 6 different ways. She stepped inside, shaking. You do not want to do this to me, Vaughn. I am not doing anything anymore. This is what justice looks like. She looked around the house, her old life. Their home. I have nothing left, she whispered. You made those choices. She paused. Is that what you told Lila? Vaughn's jaw flexed. I told her mother is going to be away for a while, and that I will always protect her. He closed the door and locked it. The courthouse lobby was stone and steel, cold in every corner. Brooks Callan walked through it in cuffs, flanked by federal agents. His suit was wrinkled, his jaw bruised, from resisting arrest, according to the report. Lorna followed behind him, not cuffed, but surrounded. Her presence was requested, not required yet. Her lawyers looked like they wanted to quit before the hearing started. Vaughn sat quietly in the gallery, beside Reiko, dressed in a dark gray suit. When the judge entered, the silence was immediate. The first charge read, Conspiracy to defraud the United States government. Brooks's lawyer objected to the audio files being played in court. Denied. The clip echoed in the chamber. He is too disciplined. It makes him predictable. Let him find out. He cannot touch me. The jury's expressions hardened. Even the clerk looked stunned. Lorna kept her eyes down the entire time. The evidence was overwhelming. The prosecution requested an immediate freeze on all residual assets and security clearances. Bail was denied for Brooks. Lorna was released under conditions, home surveillance, passport surrendered, daily check-ins. After the session, Vaughn passed them in the hallway. Lorna tried to speak. He walked right past her. Brooks did not even look up. Outside, reporters hounded them. Cameras followed every flinch. Vaughn walked to his car, opened the door, and paused. Not to gloat, just to breathe. That night, a clip from the gala aired on a primetime news segment. Unedited, unfiltered. The voiceover read, The man you tried to erase. The signature you forged. People across the country watched the moment Vaughn Reynolds stepped onto that stage and took his dignity back. Comment sections filled up with words like legend, cold, calculated, brilliant. This is how you get even. Not all heroes wear capes. Some wear scars. Even military forums picked it up. Veterans posted messages like, "This man served twice, once in war, once in silence." Reiko sent a simple message. Public opinion just shifted in your favor. You are not just the betrayed. You are the symbol. That night, Vaughn stood in the backyard with Lila. She was blowing bubbles. "Daddy," she asked, "are we safe now?" He knelt beside her. "Yes, we are." She smiled and chased another bubble. Inside, on the kitchen table, sat an unopened letter from a national nonprofit offering Vaughn a consulting position, helping train veterans on fraud detection. He picked it up, read it, then looked out at his daughter again. She laughed, loud and free. And for the first time in years, he realized he was free too. By Monday morning, the damage was global. Major news networks ran back-to-back segments. Defense power couple exposed in live scandal, whistleblower veteran brings down corrupt execs with hidden evidence, military clearance system under national review after gala meltdown. Lorna's name trended online for all the wrong reasons. Her LinkedIn profile was deleted. Her company's site went offline. Her inbox overflowed with hate mail, legal notices, and broken NDA warnings. And worse, Brooks had turned. In a desperate attempt to reduce his sentence, he submitted a written testimony placing the majority of the laundering mechanics in Lorna's lap. Claimed she initiated the idea. She forged the clearance papers. She handled the distribution. And in truth, she had. Vaughn read the full affidavit twice, sitting at his desk, as Reiko forwarded him all court filings. "Want to know the best part?" she texted. "He sold her out, and it still won't save him." Lorna tried to call Vaughn that evening. The screen flashed her name. He declined, then blocked her completely. She was out there, alone, hunted, and cornered. But he had no space left in his heart for mercy. Only memory. Only justice. And he was not finished yet. Vaughn sat in the judge's chambers, a family lawyer beside him. Lorna was on screen via secure video, under house restriction in a corporate apartment now controlled by the DOJ. Her face looked drawn, pale, unrecognizable from the woman she once was. "Mr. Reynolds," the judge said, adjusting her glasses, "you filed for full physical and legal custody of Lila." "On what grounds?" Vaughn did not flinch. "On the grounds that her mother is currently under federal investigation for conspiracy, fraud, and endangering classified information. She knowingly brought a criminal into our home. She exposed my daughter to danger, instability, and deception. And the child's wishes? My daughter asked me last week if her mother would go to jail. She is scared. She has nightmares. I will not let her grow up wondering what lies look like." Lorna's voice cracked through the speaker. "I made mistakes, but I'm still her mother." "You made calculated choices," Vaughn said, his tone razor-sharp. "You turned our daughter's father into a paper signature. You betrayed more than a marriage." The judge paused, then nodded slowly. "Custody granted. Full and immediate." Lorna's screen went black, and Vaughn let out a breath he did not realize he had been holding for 3 years. Outside, Lila waited with her babysitter. When he stepped out, she ran into his arms. Did the judge say yes? He hugged her tight. "She did. Are you mad at Mommy?" "I am just focused on you now," he whispered. And for once, the truth did not hurt to say. 2 weeks later, federal courtroom. Full security. Cameras restricted. Press banned. This was not a show anymore. It was a reckoning. Vaughn entered quietly. Sat in the back row. No expression. Just observation. Lorna sat with her defense team, 3 attorneys, pale and overworked. Brooks sat across the aisle, wearing a prison jumpsuit, already convicted on multiple counts. His plea deal removed 20 years from his sentence, but destroyed every company he ever built. And today was Lorna's turn. Reiko stood at the prosecution table, calm, precise, flanked by auditors and security officials. She opened with a statement that cut like wire. This case is not just about corruption. It is about betrayal from within, about how access becomes weapon, how silence becomes shield, and how one man, watching everything fall apart, chose to build a record instead of burn the world down. Lorna's attorneys argued for leniency, said she was manipulated, said she was emotionally vulnerable. But then the audio played. He signs anything with military jargon. He's passive. We won't need him much longer. And the courtroom heard what Vaughn had heard. Cold. Conscious. Criminal. The judge did not react to the defense's closing. She simply spoke. Guilt is not measured in tears, Ms. Reynolds. It is measured in decisions. And yours were deliberate. She banged the gavel. Trial would continue, but sentencing was no longer a question. Vaughn stood up to leave. As he walked past, Lorna looked at him. For a moment, it was not hate, not fear. It was recognition that he had done what she never expected him to do. He had waited. He had watched. And then he had won. The morning light cut across Vaughn's dining table, hitting the envelope like a spotlight. Inside, his official retirement paperwork from the Department of Defense. His final chapter in uniform closed with a signature and an optional comment box. He filled it in. Mission complete. I served my country. And then I protected my home. He sealed the envelope, walked it to the mailbox himself, and stood there a long moment before letting it go. This was not defeat. It was choice. He was not stepping down. He was stepping forward. That afternoon, Reiko called. We just confirmed sentencing for Brooks. 26 years. White-collar prison, but locked down tight. Asset seizures going public next week. And Lorna? Vaughn asked. Trial wraps in 10 days. Her defense is collapsing. Once Brooks turned, her leverage died. He said nothing for a moment. Then, thank you. Reiko's voice softened. You did the hard part, Vaughn. You sat in the fire and waited for it to burn out. He hung up, walked into the backyard, and watched Lila run through the sprinkler barefoot, laughing. It had been so long since he had heard that sound without pain behind it. There was a peace and routine Vaughn had not known in years. Every morning now began the same way. Real breakfast, real silence, and a real life. He took Lila to school, walked the long way back home, stopped by the local gym where he started training 2 veterans who were struggling with reintegration. Quiet guys. Good guys. Just lost in the fog. He showed them how to track digital footprints, how to build cases, how to read silence. I was not trained for war, one said. I was trained for noise. All this quiet? That's what's killing me. Vaughn nodded. Then make the quiet your weapon. By week's end, the program had a name, Black Echo Training Initiative, built for veterans in cyber forensics. Funded by a nonprofit that had seen Vaughn's story online, offered him full creative control. He accepted, not for the applause, for the future. That evening, he sat with Lila on the couch, watching a cartoon. She leaned her head on his arm. I like when we do this now. Me too, he said, and meant it. It had taken Vaughn weeks to even open the hallway closet. Inside, relics. The wedding album. Their honeymoon scrapbook. A folded letter Lorna wrote him when he was overseas. He sat on the floor and opened it slowly. You're my calm, my compass, my strength. He stared at the words like they belonged to another life. Maybe they did. He took a shoebox, packed everything inside, and walked it to the fire pit out back. One by one, he dropped the pages in. Photos curled at the edges, then disintegrated. The letter turned ash. He almost tossed the last photo, Lorna and Lila at the park, both smiling under the sun. But he paused, tore it down the middle, kept the half with Lila, burned the rest. Because this was not about forgetting. It was about letting go of the wrong parts and protecting what mattered. His phone rang during a Thursday morning walk. Unknown number. DC area code. He picked up. Vaughn Reynolds? The woman asked. Yes. My name is Karen Mathis. I oversee special investigations for the Office of Defense Oversight. I'd like to speak to you about a new pilot program. I'm not looking for a job, he said. This isn't a job. It's a mission. We've been following your case. Quietly. We want to replicate your surveillance and counter-fraud methods at scale. You build the protocol. Your discretion. Your rules. Vaughn stayed silent. We've already secured private backing, she continued. Your name alone, what you did, it changed how people see military fraud. It's bigger than you now. He let the silence stretch. Then said, send me a proposal. That night, as Lila fell asleep beside him during a movie, He looked out the window at the quiet street. He had not chased revenge. He had enforced balance. And now, for the first time in years, the world was asking him for direction again. This time, he would write the map. Vaughn stood at the front of a small auditorium in Phoenix. The air buzzed with quiet tension. 30 veterans sat in rows, some barely 25, others older than him. Most looked like they had not spoken much since discharge. He took a deep breath, then started. I was trained to eliminate threats, but no one trained me to identify betrayal. Silence. He clicked the remote. Slide 1. A fake invoice from Ardent Logic Systems. This paid for nothing, he said. But the signature on it? Mine. Forged by someone I trusted. She used my name because she knew I wouldn't question her. He looked up. Do not mistake loyalty for blindness. Do not assume the people closest to you are incapable of selling you out. A man in the second row leaned forward. Did you ever think of walking away from all of it? Vaughn nodded. Every day. But then I looked at my daughter. I looked at the silence. And I realized, if I didn't expose it, someone else would suffer worse. The room held still. Then, a slow clap. Others joined in. Not loud. Not celebratory. Respectful. Afterward, one vet approached him. You made it out with your soul. That's harder than any battlefield. Vaughn just nodded. Because he knew it was true. The official report hit the public 2 weeks later. Brooks Callan, sentenced to 26 years. Lorna Reynolds, found guilty on 9 federal charges. Sentencing scheduled. All assets seized. Security clearance revoked. Civil penalties pending. The report included a timeline of the crimes and credited unofficial investigator and whistleblower, Mr. Vaughn Reynolds. The comment sections exploded. That's how you end a fraud ring. She used a soldier. He used her downfall. Lorna thought she was untouchable. Karma had a USB drive. Protect your peace like Vaughn Reynolds did. In a podcast interview, Rayco Dunn said it best. He didn't want revenge. He wanted accountability. But sometimes, those are the same thing. Lorna's lawyers filed an appeal. It was denied. Her mugshot ran on national news that night. Vaughn turned off the TV halfway through. He did not need the world to remind him of what was already done. He just needed to keep moving forward. It started with a small shovel, then soil, then seeds. By the end of the month, Vaughn's backyard had transformed into a raised garden. Tomatoes, basil, spinach, and one row of sunflowers Lila insisted on. She helped him every afternoon, hands in dirt, face streaked with sun. This one's mine, she said, pointing to the tallest plant. It's already taller than you, he smiled. Like you, she said. He paused, then planted one more seed. Not in the ground, in his heart, because healing does not always announce itself. Sometimes it grows slowly, quietly, between rows of things you never thought you'd care about again. One afternoon, as he stood watering the garden, a neighbor passed by. You're the guy from the story, right? The gala. The case. Vaughn gave a small nod. I just wanted to say, we were all watching. And we were all rooting for you. Vaughn said nothing at first. Then, thank you. And he meant it. Because the garden was not for show. It was proof that something could grow where everything once fell apart. Inside Vaughn's desk drawer sat a thick manila folder labeled Operation. Silence proof. Inside. Every document. Every photo. Every audio file. He had not opened it in weeks. One night, as Lila slept and the house was quiet, he pulled it out, ran his hand over it, thought about everything it had cost, and everything it had saved. He opened it, looked at the first page, then closed it again. He walked to the fireplace, stood there for a long time, then placed the folder on the logs, lit a match, watched it catch slowly, page by page, until there was nothing left but black ash and orange flame, not out of rage, but because he no longer needed to hold it. Not the proof, not the pain. It had served its purpose. Justice had been done. And the story? It belonged to the past now. It was late. The rain outside was steady, soft, and constant, just enough to fill the silence of the room. Vaughn was tucking Lila into bed. Her hair was damp from her bath. She had her favorite book under her arm, one she insisted on reading even though she had it memorized. But tonight, she did not open it. Instead, she looked at him seriously. Daddy, he sat on the edge of the bed. Yes, you protected us, right? The words hung in the air, small, simple, but heavier than anything else that had come before them. Vaughn nodded slowly. Yes, I did. She smiled and laid back. Good. I always thought you would. He tucked the blanket under her chin and kissed her forehead. Sleep now. No more worrying. As he stood to leave, she whispered, I don't worry anymore. Vaughn paused at the door and looked back at her. She was already asleep. The words followed him down the hall, echoing louder than any applause he had received. You protected us. Not a headline, not a quote, just the truth. And it meant everything. The veterans program had grown fast, faster than Vaughn expected. What started as a two-man workshop in a local gym had become a state-certified initiative with over 70 enrollees and 3 rotating instructors. And Vaughn, despite his discomfort with public speaking, had become the face of it. That day, he stood in front of a packed room, holding up a fake invoice identical to the one that had nearly ruined his life. This, he said, is what it looks like when someone tries to erase your name and write their future on top of it. The room was silent. He tossed it aside. You want to be invisible? Fine. But be the kind of invisible that watches, that tracks, that documents. One of the younger vets, barely out of his 20s, raised a hand. How did you stay calm, knowing what they were doing to you? Vaughn nodded slowly. Because rage burns fast. Strategy lasts. After class, a woman approached him privately. My husband. He forged my name on a house sale while I was deployed. I only found out last week. Vaughn's face did not change. You want help? She nodded. He handed her a blank case packet. Start here. Build the file. Let the facts do the punching. She smiled, not with hope, with purpose. And Vaughn realized this was no longer just about what he had survived. It was about what he was teaching others to fight. 1 month after the sentencing, Vaughn received a letter. Handwritten. No return address. Inside, a single page. You did not have to humiliate me the way you did. You turned the world against me. I was wrong. But you were cruel. Maybe that is what you always were underneath. Not calm. Just cold. It was unsigned. But he knew who had written it. He folded the letter and placed it inside a drawer. Not out of sentiment. Out of evidence. She wanted to rewrite the story again. To twist the narrative into something where she was the wounded, not the weapon. But Vaughn would not respond. Because that was what she had never understood. He did not do any of this to break her. He did it to stop her. And once that was done, he had no interest in keeping the game going. Later that day, a journalist called. Wanted a follow-up story. A deeper dive into the psyche behind the revenge. Will you talk to us? Vaughn paused, then said, no, and hung up. Some victories do not need to be explained. They just need to stand. The ceremony was small. No cameras. No microphones. Just a group of quiet professionals in suits and boots, gathered under a modest oak tree on the grounds of a federal training facility. Vaughn was being recognized with a national commendation, not for combat, but for civilian integrity. Reiko stood beside him as the certificate was handed over. I don't usually show up for these, she said under her breath. He smirked. You mean you hate speeches? Exactly. The commanding officer spoke. Vaughn Reynolds is proof that vigilance is not just a military duty. It's a moral one. Soft applause followed. No fanfare. Just quiet respect. Afterward, Vaughn stood alone near the oak tree, hands in his pockets. One of the young cadets approached. Sir, I read the whole case file. It was brutal, but you handled it like a professional. Like a ghost. How did you do it? Vaughn looked at him. By remembering that silence is not weakness. It is patience. And patience wins wars. The cadet nodded and walked away. And Vaughn stayed there, eyes on the horizon, knowing that every scar, every breath, every sacrifice had finally built something no one could ever take away again. Months passed. Lorna's sentence was official, 11 years in a federal facility. Eligible for parole in 6. No appeals granted. Brooks was already locked down and forgotten. The world had moved on. The headlines faded. But Vaughn's life? It was just beginning. He moved into a new home on the edge of town. Modest, bright, a wide front porch and a garden twice the size of the old one. On moving day, he opened a single remaining storage box from the garage. Inside was one item, a sealed envelope marked Evidence, Private Copy. He held it for a long time, then placed it into the bottom of a drawer. Not burned, not displayed, just done. That chapter was over. This one was quieter, fuller, and entirely his. That night, he watched Lila fall asleep in her new room. Stars glowed on the ceiling. Her laughter still echoed down the hall from earlier that day. He walked to the back porch, sat down with a glass of tea, and listened to the wind in the trees. No alarms, no secrets, just peace. And peace, Vaughn now knew, is the loudest kind of victory. 2 weeks later, Vaughn received a handwritten letter from a young man in Colorado. A vet, recently divorced, emotionally wrecked. I watched your story, and I just wanted to say, you made me feel less crazy, less stupid. You made me believe I could rebuild. Vaughn responded. He wrote, "You are not stupid. You are loyal. That is not a weakness, it is a strength. But it must be guarded, earned, never given blindly." The message went viral when the young man posted it online. It reached forums, support groups, even military channels across different countries. Soon, Vaughn began getting more letters, emails, even quiet visits from people who had experienced betrayal and never said a word until now. He never branded it, never sold it. He just kept helping. One conversation at a time, one life at a time, one truth at a time. One night, Reiko visited his home. "You ever think about writing it all down?" she asked. "No," he replied, "because the story is not about me anymore." She tilted her head. "Then what is it about?" Vaughn looked toward the horizon. "It is about everyone who gets broken and thinks they have to stay that way." The sun was setting. Orange-gold light painted the edge of the garden as Vaughn watered Lila's sunflowers. She ran over and hugged him from behind, small arms around his waist. "Daddy?" "Yeah, baby. We're okay now, right? Forever." He knelt, looked her in the eyes. "Yes," he said softly. "Forever." She smiled, hugged him again, and ran inside to feed their dog. Vaughn stayed in the garden a moment longer, took in the air, the light, the life he had fought for, and won, not with fists, but with focus, with truth, with patience. And now, to you, yes, you still watching, what would you do if the person you trusted most turned out to be the one tearing you down silently? Would you break, or would you build? Tell me in the comments. And tell me, where in the world are you watching this from right now? I really want to know. If this story meant something to you, tap that like, it tells me this message landed. Subscribe to catch the next epic revenge thriller coming soon. And hey, until we meet again in another brutal, brilliant, unforgettable story, take care of your truth, protect your peace, and never, ever mistake silence for weakness. Final lesson from this story: loyalty without boundaries becomes your enemy's weapon. Silence is not surrender. It is the space where strategy is born. Do not rush revenge. Let it ripen into justice. Because the truth? The most powerful revenge is the life you rebuild after they thought they destroyed you. We'll see you in the next one. Take care. Stay sharp. The story may end here, but yours is just beginning.